Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 29. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Friday. Steelers Nation, Dave, the Pittsburgh Steelers have officially arrived in Dublin, Ireland to get ready for Sunday's game, the first ever regular season contest in Ireland. So the Steelers are out of the country. We are still in front of our computers, ready to talk about this game. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Happy Friday to you. Happy Friday to the listeners sitting here in Mom's basement, getting ready for the big game this weekend. Should be a fun one, getting up bright and early and having that out of the way, and then we'll be able to watch a little bit of football. I believe after that, the rest of the weekend, and then, of course, a bye week for the Steelers after that. Real quick, I wanted to get your thoughts on Thursday night, Seahawks and Cardinals. That ended up being bit of a snoozer for the first, 3.5 quarters or whatnot. Then it got interesting late there, but the most notable thing, I think, was that kickoff there at the end of it. You got to see the dynamic kickoff rules kind of come into play with a bad kickoff that didn't land in the landing zone, and Seattle ended up getting the ball at the 40, and only took them a couple plays in today's NFL with the way these kickers are kicking from 50 plus out to end up winning the game. And I guess my overarching question is, and Lindsey Rhodes, who used to be on NFL Network, tweeted about this a couple of times, how some of this strategy, how some of these teams are trying to knuckleball these things into the landing zone, and that's when it's done successfully, there's good returns. It's a good strategy as far as teams not being able to return these things out. And I think earlier in the game, I think the Cardinals did that with success, but obviously in the second one, it didn't. So, I guess my question is do you like, are you liking the dynamic kicking rules as is right now when it comes to strategy and returns as we enter week 4 here?
Yes, I do. There should be a consequence to not getting the ball in the landing zone, a consequence to teams who attempt those knuckleball shorter kicks for the benefit of, if you do it successfully, you can really mess with returns. That's becoming really popular this year. Seattle did it repeatedly to Pittsburgh. That was one of those kicks on the Caleb Johnson flub. That was one of those kind of knuckleball short kicks that bounces. So, yeah, there should be a risk and reward. It's also in place for the unintended consequences of what if a team, if that rule didn't exist, you could kick the ball wherever you wanted to without penalty. Would a team try to kick it really short or kick it up in the air? It's the same reason why, and people complain, oh, you can't do the surprise onside kick anymore. We don't like that. You should still be allowed. Well, you can't do a surprise onside kick under these new rules because of the placement of the players. And in theory, if a kicker could only kick the ball 10 yards, you could just go recover every single kickoff. So there's no logistical way you could do a surprise onside kick based on the setup. So I think there should be risks and rewards, and I have no problem with that setup.
I am of the same thinking, too, at this point, and I think it adds a new level of strategy and execution into this at this point, and you better know the rules, and the Steelers found that out firsthand against Seattle, and even though the strategy that the Cardinals had in that game with that kind of knuckleballer, if you will, was their plan, they did not execute it. And they paid dearly at the end of the game for it there. So I am finding and obviously too, kickoff returns are up in the league as the intentions were, and I think even Mike Tomlin was asked about kind of something along the lines of the kickoff rules this morning in the competition committee, and how everything is kind of going the way they kind of hoped it would with this. So I just thought that I'd bring that up because it ended up, you play all that long, and then the Cardinals did a good job to get back into the game and last night, and they did, and the kickoff ended up being a huge turning point in that game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All that work to just give it all away sort of at the end. But if teams don't want to take that risk of not getting the ball in the landing zone, every kicker can kick it traditionally and conventionally, and that'll essentially never be a problem so long as the kick stays in bounds. So, yeah, I have no problem with the setup.
All right, and it's making kickers really. It's bringing kickers back into the game a little bit when it comes to the kickoff. So I like that.
And it brings kickoffs back because they were basically dead in the water. And if this rule either wasn't implemented or didn't fix things, kickoffs probably wouldn't exist this season. The NFL would have just scrapped it, put the ball at the 30 or whatever, and started games that way because of how inactive the old kickoffs became in the NFL. So, good question there. Interesting game last night. We'll see if Pittsburgh's game is just as close ultimately. Dave, we'll talk about
real quick. One other thing I hate to dominate with this, but as far as strategy goes, Cardinals did such a good job getting it in that game. Would you have gone for two there? And obviously if you didn't get the kickoff right, it wouldn't have mattered after that. But would you have gone for two, fighting back at home the way that you did? Would you have gone for two if you were Arizona at the end, or would you just went into overtime?
Yeah, I don't have a real strong opinion either way. I really didn't watch much of the game. I don't watch much of the Amazon games because I don't have the account and I'm working on my scouting report. So I don't want to be distracted by it all. But it depends on how good of a 2-point play that I have. I mean, typically the idea is on the road, you're more aggressive going for two than at home. So in hindsight, you could sit there and say, yeah, go for two. I have no issue kicking the extra point though.
All right, I did have +2 in that, so I was hoping they'd go for it there, and even if they missed, I would have been fine with that. But all right, I promise that's enough of the Thursday night game there. Sorry about that.
No, you're all good. Interesting conversation there. We'll talk about the Steelers' health situation, their travel in just one moment. Just want to tease later on in the show, have a beat writer this week. That is Ben Goessling, who's a beat writer for the Minnesota Star Tribune. He's also on KFan 103, contributor, and also on the Access Vikings podcast. And so we'll talk to Ben here in a little bit, get his thoughts on the Vikings. He was kind enough to lend his time. He had just arrived in Dublin a couple hours before talking to us. And so he's boots on the ground, already had kind of a feel for what the environment was like, but has a lot of good insight on Minnesota this week. Dave, as we mentioned, Steelers have officially landed in Ireland. The team account tweeted that out a little before 4 a.m. Eastern time on Friday. That's, I think, 9 a.m. roughly Ireland local time. And so the team has arrived. There's been some discussion and debate about when the Steelers were allowed to travel. I think we talked about on Wednesday's show that Jerry Dulac in a chat said the NFL blocked the Steelers' attempt to leave earlier in the week. The NFL Friday morning refuting that and saying the NFL has no control over when teams leave. Teams can leave on their own accord. And so they're saying the Steelers voluntarily chose to leave late Thursday after practice and arrive early Friday, mimicking the schedule they left in 2013 for the London game, also against Minnesota. So conflicting reports. You would have to ultimately trust the NFL is being truthful here, but that is the latest.
Yeah, we're resigned to the fact of some of this reporting, whether it's right or not, and we put out what's put out there, and it didn't make sense as a whole too, because you have Minnesota obviously staying overseas, right? And
well, that's a specialty thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know our team, because Minnesota also left today or Thursday, correct?
I don't know if I believe that's the case.
I just searched Vikings arrive Ireland and got a lot of history. I didn't get the current Minnesota Vikings team. I don't know exactly when the Minnesota left, but I think teams are generally leaving late. So it made sense on the surface when that initial report from Dulac came out. The NFL wants uniformity and structure and nobody to have not an unfair, but a different advantage over the other. But you're right, Minnesota playing the back-to-back games, so they still have to travel. They're going to London. I assume they're going to do that right after the game Sunday. But the reporters from the NFL, they did not control when Pittsburgh left.
All right. So with that, do you feel this team should have left a day earlier?
Yeah, I think early in the week's probably the way to go. Because of what happened in 2013 and from hearing from the players and how tired and jet lagged they were and just unprepared for the game. And it's good to get acclimated over there. Now, I know that's a lot more logistical issues to deal with, and you're away from home and your facility and training and rehab and doctors and all that kind of stuff can certainly create a lot of headaches. But I just think based on what happened in 2013, you should leave earlier. Now, are you resigned to the same fate you were in 2013? No, not necessarily, depending on how you prepared during the week before you left and what happens whenever you get on the ground in terms of your sleep schedule and planning and everything. Minnesota leaving, I believe, at the same time, essentially, as Pittsburgh. So, that's not that you're doomed to be just as tired for this game. And I would like to think Pittsburgh has a smarter strategy this time around about a plan and map out this trip.
Yeah, I think didn't Aaron Rodgers say something to the fact just stay up all day like today or whatnot, then get yourself to bed and then get on that schedule there, I guess. Something along those lines, he said. So anyway, we'll see if this ends up having an impact. See if they end up looking sluggish, one team more than the other on Sunday morning there.
All right, Dave, let's get to the health of each team, starting with the Pittsburgh Steelers on the Thursday report, and also Thursday night, the team officially announcing Alex Highsmith will not play in this game with his high ankle sprain suffered in week 2. That is no surprise. Mike Tomlin said as much Tuesday, but Highsmith did not make the trip to Ireland, so unfortunately, he can't even enjoy the brief time Pittsburgh has in Dublin. Also not practicing for the Steelers on Thursday, DK Metcalf. That's just due to rest. He's okay. He's going to play. Ditto with TJ Watt, Cam Hayward. They rested Wednesday and Thursday. Imagine they'll get some work in today, but they will suit up against Minnesota. Limited on Thursday was running back Jalen Warren with a knee, tight end Jonnu Smith with a hip, cornerback Joey Porter Jr. with a hamstring, and DeShon Elliott with a knee. Porter and Elliott have been out since midway through week 1. Warren and Smith, those are new injuries to the report, so they're worth monitoring for Friday. I'm going to imagine they'll play. We'll have to check it for the final report. And of course, Porter and Elliott, certainly names to watch. Feels like those guys may end the week questionable, and we'll have to see their status for Sunday morning.
Yeah, they'll be definitely the ones to watch. What do you think about Highsmith not traveling? That's got to be just due to want him to stay home and get treatment and not have to do the walking and all like that, right?
Exactly. It's just probably the best thing for his health. Get healthy through the bye and be ready for week 6.
All right, and limited 2 days in a row, and this team probably not doing. I think Mike Tomlin was asked this morning something along the lines about the walkthrough at Croke Park, and they're not even going to go do that. So it does. I don't know where they would practice. I guess that would the walkthrough have been today that they were going to.
Well, there was footage of them. There was footage of them walking out somewhere. So I don't know if it was maybe a morning walkthrough and a practice later in the day. They apparently at the facility they're staying has multiple football fields, so they can practice right on site.
Okay, so we'll see. I don't know how intensive a practice that will be after a long trip like that and all, but I guess the key thing is. You have, and then, it looked like, for the most part, just on some of the clips that came out back in Pittsburgh there, that Porter and Elliott were moving around pretty decently, but it's hard to judge, ultimate, participation when it goes to that. So I mean, we'll see. I don't know if those two guys both get listed as limited today. It's hard to imagine that they'll suit up for Sunday. But stranger things have happened. But we'll see what the injury report says on Friday. And I would imagine, as you stated, both of those guys be listed as questionable.
The Friday practice, usually a little lower key, whether that's stateside or in Dublin, so maybe these guys can get full. My gut was, and Ray Fittipaldo, beat writer who watches the team in practice, believe that Elliott had a better chance to play than Porter. That's been my feeling as well, but we'll just have to wait and see. We'd love to get at least one of those guys back. If Porter can't play, then you still have your competent and good top 3 of Ramsey and Slay, who will play, and Brandon Echols, also Isaac Seumalo, returned to practice in full after getting some rest. Patrick Queen has practiced in full all week with the oblique, and despite Darius Slay with that leg contusion, he practiced in full on Thursday, and he will play as well.
All right. And as far as Saturday goes, we could be looking at another elevation for Trey Sermon. I guess this team's still officially, even though they brought in Nate Herbig for a visit, nothing has happened there. And I would imagine he couldn't travel with the team if he's not signed, right? So it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. It seems like this team's going to potentially go into this game with a 52-man active roster, and like they did last week, and then we potentially see Trey Sermon elevated on Saturday, and then 5 inactives again.
Right. So interesting. Pittsburgh keeping that roster spot open for as long as they have, almost a week now. But I guess until they need to decide how to utilize that last spot, there's no rush to do so, especially with the elevations that they have at their disposal.
All right. We could be looking at the same inactive list, I guess, as last week then.
For the Vikings and their health, offensive lineman Donovan Jackson has been ruled out for this game with a wrist injury. That's not on the report officially, but that was noted by head coach Kevin O'Connell this weekend. He underwent surgery. J.J. McCarthy, of course, will not play. Carson Wentz will get the start. I think the number one name to watch from the health standpoint of Minnesota is Andrew Van Ginkel, your guy. He's had a neck issue. He did not practice on Thursday, and so that's a guy that picked sixth Aaron Rodgers last year. Would love for him to not play in this one, but his status seems to be up in the air heading into Friday's final report.
Yeah, a couple things to watch here, and as people will find out, we talked to Ben Goessling here. Darisaw seemed like they might have pulled him out of that game last week due to the score and all like that as he's working his way back. So I think he's going to be ready to go again at left tackle on Sunday against the Steelers. Donovan Jackson, as you mentioned, that's a key one to watch there with them not having him this week. The replacement left guard's going to be going up against Cameron Hayward, so that's key. Ryan Kelly should be back this week from his concussion. Here's something to kind of watch. And Andrew Van Ginkel, he didn't play a lot in that last game. It would obviously be a big miss if they didn't have him for any snaps out here. But one kind of underrated one to watch here is Javon Hargrave with the chest injury. I think he suits up, obviously, for this game. But having him not at full strength, and especially the way he's played on tape so far, we'll get into this a little bit more when we kind of preview the game after talking to Ben there. This could end up being an area of attack for the Steelers, not only just because of how Javon Hargrave has played so far against the run, but also if he's not 100%, that's another element to this. So I do think he plays, but I think this is an area of attack for the Steelers going into this game. We'll talk about that a little bit in a little bit. So Van Ginkel, we'll watch what happens with him, and I think he is the key one as far as whether in or out this week for them.
Steeler fans know Hargrave well. He's got 2 sacks from Minnesota. Was a good offseason addition after getting released by the 49ers. All right, Dave, let's go to the coordinator corner. Arthur Smith, Terrell Austin speaking to the media on Thursday, as they always do before the team departed for Ireland. Arthur Smith may be the most optimistic man about the Steelers' running game, despite it really flailing throughout these 3 games and, frankly, the entire season from the moment this team stepped foot in Latrobe training camp. Arthur Smith talked about how close some of these runs were, running the ball well early, running the ball more effectively late in the game, doing so in some of those situational moments. Certainly this team ran the ball well on those first 2 possessions. The question was just kind of what happened afterwards, with the running game really seemed to dry up. But Arthur Smith thinks this team is close to popping a big play.
Show it to me, baby. Show it to me. And if ever was a week where you probably want to run the ball or think that you can run the ball or think that you need to be able to run the ball, this is the week, especially against that Brian Flores defense, the way they handle things in the passing game there. What did he say? Some of these were about to pop, and I think he even noted we had a run that I think that bounced. That had to be the one that Jalen Warren did not follow the double up into there and bounced it out to Calvin Austin's side there. I would have to think that's the one, right?
Yeah, we pointed that one out in the video we did earlier this week before Smith's comments. Smith says, quote, "We had a run that I think that bounced. Those are the things you've got to work on at the point of attack. Troy and Mason, that's about as good of a duo blocking. You will see that was a double team on 97 Milton Williams. It was a great double to wash the D tackle out, and Warren should have stayed downhill. Don't know why he bounced the run." So in the video I did, a lot of issues, primarily on the offensive line. But Warren was not immune to criticism either.
Right.
There were a couple of misreads, and that one was a pretty clear one confirmed now by Arthur Smith.
Right. It had to be that one when you look at the tape there, because you're not going to purposely set up a run with Calvin Austin digging out the safety. All his job is to do is to get in the way of the safety, basically in that one, for half a second there. Yeah, I mean, I think for those that have gone and watched that 20-something minute video that you put together, I think you outlined it well. But how many teams throughout the NFL can say, yeah, we were close? You're not going to be perfect on every run situation there, but oftentimes one failed block, one missed assignment can make a difference. There was an outside zone, I think, in this game as well too, where I mentioned that you probably one of the best kind of crack inside blocks that you'll see from Pat Freiermuth, and had that been blocked up, one other defender blocked on that one probably busts for at least 10 yards, in that one. So
Can I ask you about that play? And we're going to get really in the weeds here, and it's hard to talk about this in audio format without video for the listeners. But what do you think the error was in that play? I still can't square what was at fault, who was at fault on that play.
That was the one where Broderick Jones is trying to come up and get the second level linebacker, right, where he kind of reaches out to his left first to try to push away off of that. It just seemed like Broderick might have been a little late getting out to the second level.
I think we're thinking of different plays. You think about the goal line play? Or
No.
down near the goal line? No? Okay, I'm thinking about the one on Fautanu when the D tackle went inside, spiked inside, and got upfield. So maybe we're talking about different plays.
All right, and I might be talking about a different play altogether there. Are we talking about the one where Freiermuth, I might be mixing up a couple. The one where Freiermuth cracked inside and got the good block?
I can send you the clip of the one that I'm talking about. It was Freiermuth cracking inside, but it was run to the right. It wasn't to Broderick's side.
Okay. No, but the one that I'm talking about wasn't to Broderick's side, but somebody was trying to get off to the second level there, I think. Send me the clip real quick.
Okay, yeah. And this is not ideal podcast, but I do want to talk through this one because I'm something went wrong here. Obviously, the question is Fautanu or his steps wrong? Was he expecting help? That's kind of what it comes down to for me. Otherwise, it was blocked up well. Freiermuth had the block. Things look good. As you said, that one failed block can really ruin the play.
Yeah, I'm watching it right now. You've got Washington over on that side with Fautanu. Okay, that's not the play that I'm thinking of there. Then I got the two mixed up there. But that was one that should have busted.
Right. So a lot of little things that just aren't quite there for this run game. That's the bottom line. But Arthur Smith made the grand point saying, quote, "You can't be delusionally optimistic. You can't be overly cynical. You've got to be objective and realistic. No, on this journey, the best teams are the ones that improve. We've got the right guys, which is why we've been up. The 2 road games we've won, those guys have stood up. And when it's critical, those guys have stood up when it's critical, I should say," Smith said. So he's still optimistic that they're winning in spite of the issues, winning on the road, which is certainly difficult to do at the NFL level. And he thinks this team has the right stuff and is going in the right direction.
Yeah, with Fautanu on that one, it feels like he maybe should have squared him up a little bit more.
Right. He's got to reach and get outside because the ball's going outside of him. So I understand that. I think overall Pittsburgh did not do well, didn't have a good plan when the Patriots defensive line and D tackles would one gap and shoot and spike up field. There really wasn't good coordination there. But the question is, should Fautanu's technique be different, or was he expecting McCormick to come to flow with him instead of climbing to the backside linebacker? That's the debate in my head right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one block away from cracking for at least 10, it feels like.
Sure. So, Arthur's made another interesting, slightly separate point that's positive, and I agree with. He's talked about they have 17 points on opening drives this year. They got the 2 touchdowns and a field goal that came against Seattle. And in Pittsburgh's world, that is just booming business-wise in terms of the opening possessions. All of last year, Dave, combined for the entire season, Pittsburgh had 18 first drive points, 6 field goals. This year, 17 points, 2 touchdowns and 1 field goal. So a massive difference. What exactly the change is, Aaron Rodgers helps, obviously. Smith in the second year in the system, obviously. Not playing the quarterback change game that Pittsburgh did last year can also help, you would imagine. And then just simply guys making plays. 1 or 2 plays can be the difference between a field goal and a touchdown, a punt and a field goal, etc. So regardless of the reason, the first drive possessions much more effective.
Yeah. Do we have, does StatHead have where you can break down what rushing yards the Steelers have through their first 2 possessions of games?
Probably we could do something like that. It may take some time to
I know we could
cobble
get
that
first
together,
quarter,
yes.
but
Yes, we can do that.
I know we could do first quarter, but I was just wondering first 2 drives specifically because that's where most of the success of this team has come is in the first two possessions, not necessarily the first quarter as a whole.
You're looking for this year?
Yeah, first 2 possessions.
All right. Well, I mean, actually, maybe a little bit tougher to do in
Right.
terms of the rushing yards. Not going to be an easy way to do it here on the fly, but
Right.
certainly
Needless
the
to say,
Patriots
they've
can.
been better in their first 2 possessions, though.
Yes, they have. And on those first 2 possessions, overall 6 drives, and have all 6 of them resulted in scores? Is that what I'm seeing here on StatHead right now?
Well, the
Is that
first
accurate?
2 against in this last game obviously were, and first 2 against the Jets weren't they?
Yeah, if I've inputted everything in correctly, which I believe I have, Pittsburgh has scored on all 6 of its opening 2 possessions throughout the first 3 games, 3 touchdowns and 3 field goals, which is fantastic. Wow.
Yeah,
Great starts by Pittsburgh. So the script has been great. I think Arthur Smith has
yeah,
had some really good scripts, really good game plans. The counterpunching once defenses adjust back seems to be the issue.
absolutely. And they're going to have to get off to a fast start in this game. It goes without saying, too. It feels like to jump on top of 'cause one of the things, and we'll get into this a little bit. It's hard to watch the tape of 3 games of Minnesota Vikings because one of them, obviously, you have a different quarterback in, and on top of it, the one that just played last week with Wentz and them, Wentz wasn't asked to do too much after the first half because of the way the defense had 2 defensive touchdowns, and they just jumped on top of them there. So you need kind of a revert. You need to make sure that Carson Wentz has to throw the football in this game. I think that's going to be a big component of this game overall.
Pittsburgh, one of just 2 teams in the NFL to score on all 6 of its opening 2 possessions entering Thursday Night Football. The Colts, the Daniel Jones Indianapolis Colts. The Vikings tied for last in the NFL in that category. Just 1 scoring drive on their opening 2 possessions this season. That's tied with Cleveland and New Orleans. So can Pittsburgh, for a change, jump on a team that, granted, they jumped on New England and squandered the chance, but maybe that's something that can play to their favor in this game.
It would not hurt to see them jump out to a 7-0 or a 10-0 or a 14-0 lead in this one. Would be a big component of the game, I think, if they could do that.
Anything else? Some Arthur Smith spoke a little bit about Brian Flores and their history. Smith said he interviewed him, I think in 22. I forget the exact circumstances behind that, but said they have similar philosophies.
All right. Not much more. He talked about Calvin Austin and what he's bringing to the team, but outside of that, I think there's a couple of Brian Flores questions. He talked about how game circumstances have impacted, I guess, the wide receivers and tight ends getting the balls and things along those lines. So there wasn't too much to take away other than what he had to say about the run game.
Terrell Austin happy with Derek Harmon's NFL regular season debut, his conditioning, his overall play, saying that Harmon picked up where he left off in the summer before spraining his MCL.
Yeah, talked about what Jordan Addison brings back to this offense, with the Vikings obviously getting him back this week. Just how good a wide receiver and separation Justin Jefferson is. One of the biggest things I think to talk about was the communication, that he feels that the communication is getting better, thinks they have the talent to work with. They'll continue to try to get better there. And then the other big topic, I think, was the third downs. And he talked specifically or noted, or it seemed to allude back to the third downs that New England had the touchdowns on, right? And a couple of them to the tight ends, I believe, and most notably the miscommunication or the failed execution on the second one to Hunter Henry that we've already talked about, where you've got a spot that you're supposed to drop into, and obviously it looks like Peyton Wilson did not do that. So there's a mix of communication and assignment issues that continue to plague this defense, particularly on third downs. And as we noted the other day, not necessarily giving up the necessary yardage on third downs against New England specifically, but giving up enough where it's put New England in advantageous situations to go for it on fourth down.
Right, Austin, talking about the new age NFL, the push of analytics and teams being more aggressive to go for it on fourth down. The Patriots going for it on 4th and 1 on their own, whatever it was, 15-yard line. Things that probably wouldn't have happened 10, 15 years ago, but have become pretty common around the NFL. Austin cited not necessarily bad scheme, but just not great execution on allowing some of those third down conversions or close to conversions. He says, quote, "We just have to be tighter in terms of where we are, in terms of our drops, in terms of what our landmarks are. We do some spot drop stuff. We have particular landmarks we like to get, and sometimes we don't exactly get on them. Sometimes we don't break. There's a lot of different things that go into it, so it's not really just one person or one thing," end quote. So for those unaware, spot drop, that zone drops to a landmark. You're not matching coverage. You're not on a man. You're to a landmark in terms of what your depth has to be in zone coverage. And so Austin wants to see the group to be tighter and more detailed overall.
Here's the thing: when it comes to both of these teams heading into this game, neither team's been great on third downs this year, and on the offensive side of football. And then when it comes to defense, the Vikings have been far superior to the Steelers on third down so far. So it's an obvious thing to say third down conversion rates play a big component in every NFL game. You better come out close to even or better when it comes to third down. And, look, the Vikings, I think on 3rd and 7 situation, 3rd or 7 or more on the defensive side of the football, they've only given up 1 of 18 opportunities to convert so far this season. And the Steelers are horrible on 3rd and long situations. But on the flip side, Carson Wentz and the Vikings have not been great on third downs either. So you better get in third in manageable situations for either team this week. And that's going to be a key component to this game. The Steelers have got to absolutely be better, especially in third and short situations in this game. They need to keep Carson Wentz in 3rd and 7 or long, and then get off the damn field this week. If they don't, then they're. It might not bode well for them, especially if their own offense isn't able to do anything against this very, very good pass defense, specifically on third down for the Vikings.
Offensively, Pittsburgh 22nd on third down, Minnesota 28th on third down. So neither very good. Whoever shows improvement in this game may come out on top.
Exactly.
Anything else from Terrell Austin? That was kind of the bulk of it overall. TJ Watt talked about him still not moving around a ton. He is moving around more this year than last year, but Austin acknowledging that Watt is not always as comfortable playing on the other side than he is at his normal left outside linebacker spot. And so that's one reason why he's on that left side. We'll call it 90 to 95% of the time this year.
Right. And Derek Carmen, and we mentioned this the other day, played 35, I think, so snaps against New England. All signs point to that being a good first outing for him, and you would have to think that their concerns were about conditioning going into it, and it seems like he passed the test that it allowed him to play as much as he did against the Patriots. I'm looking for 45 to 55 snaps out of Harmon, and that could end up being a big component in this game as well, too, especially on early downs if you're able to get him out there on the field a little bit more. So seems like the coaching staff is happy with what happened with Derek Harmon in his debut, and he could end up playing a big part in this game for the Steelers on defense if they're able to get that quality of play for 10, 15 more snaps a game out of him.
Agreed. He had a full week of practice after just that one full session this time, or almost 1 week ago. Last Thursday was his only full practice after being limited Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm just hoping for fewer plays by this defense overall. The volume they've had to absorb has not been great, and there's a variety of things for that. The offense's own issues, but primarily this defense's own inability to get stops on third down. I'm just off the top of my head trying to think what the stat I had was. I think the opposition has run 197 plays this year, and Pittsburgh's offense has run 162, so a difference of 35. Pittsburgh has lost the time of possession and play snap battle in all 3 games. So basically, the Steelers defense has played an extra half game so far than the offense has. That's far from ideal, obviously. I remember last year, Pittsburgh's defense was playing so few snaps. They were winning on possession downs. They were getting off the field. The offense was doing a good job. They had played like one fewer game than the offense throughout the first month of the season. So it's kind of flipped this year, and that's just not good for the present, obviously, but also by the end of the season, you're going to be worn down because you're playing extra snaps that you had to absorb early in the year.
Yeah, here's something that might play into it. The Vikings are running an average of 51 plays per game, which is the fewest in the league, and Pittsburgh is at 54 plays per game. So their offense has been on the field. Now, look, when you have a couple of defensive touchdowns, you're still, even though you're 3 games into this, it's still a small sample size overall. And when your defense is scoring the way the Vikings had a couple of those against the Bengals, and you get a little bit conservative on offense the way the Vikings did in the second half of the game, that's going to skew things. But and then you add in the fact that the Vikings haven't been good on third down, even worse on third down than the Steelers have been through the first 3 games. That whole plays into it. So yeah, especially when you consider the travel involved in all this and the way the Steelers defense has been on the field as much, and how Alex has been taxed on having to chart all these plays so far there. It would be nice to get out of this game with Minnesota only running, 55 to 59 offensive plays.
Tell me about it. Tom Mead has it easy on the offense chart and get that done in a hot minute. Actually, I just looked it up. Minnesota outsnapped Cincinnati in that blowout win, which I would not have expected because, as you said, the 2 defensive touchdowns takes away possessions, but Minnesota was badly outsnapped in week 1 against Chicago and week 2 against Atlanta. So can Pittsburgh have that same script in their advantage? Would certainly love to see that happen.
Yeah, the Ireland fans might not come away with a good feel for offensive football in this one.
Hey, they like kicking, so you might see a lot of that. They might like it then.
Yeah, but it would play. It would, to me, it feels like this. Assuming there's no, not a lot of turnovers in this one, the way there was last week there for Minnesota there. This bodes well the less that the Steelers defense is on the field, and obviously good if the Steelers offense can stay out there a handful more plays.
We just recognize, I know it's so late in the week to talk about it, that New England ran 71 plays despite 5 turnovers. They might have had the most plays of any team in a 5-turnover game in NFL history. I mean, to have that number of turnovers and still dominate the time of possession and play battle kind of spoke to, again, Pittsburgh's struggles, allowing those long drives, 17 plays, 15 plays, and the offense's inability to convert and extend their own drives.
Yeah, that just goes to show you how important at the end of those long drives those turnovers were, right?
Right, absolutely. All right, Dave, anything else from the coordinators or any other player that spoke? Aaron Rodgers spoke. He also spoke today after the team arrived in Ireland, but just kind of talked about drinking Guinness and not much about football. It was more about just kind of the pomp and circumstance of the Ireland game.
I know you're not a drinker. You've never been a drinker. I'm gonna ruffle some favorite feathers here. I think Guinness is overrated.
I'm sure that there goes our sponsorship for them, I'm
Yeah,
sure. So way
yeah.
to go.
And I grew up a warm beer drinker too, just because it was cheaper to go buy a suitcase of beer off the shelf than it was to buy it out of the cooler when I was growing up there. So, but I never could. Those dark beers and all like that. I was a beeraholic too.
What was your beer of choice back in your day then?
If I could afford it at a time, I was a big Bud Light, drinker. But in the early days, it was anything. It was the cheapest that you could get off the shelf. So there was a lot of Budweiser. There was a lot of PBR. If you could hit nickel beer spots up, whatever they had on draft, a lot of times that was Pabst Blue Ribbon and all like that. But whatever I could get my hands on, Milwaukee's Best for a while. That was cheap by the case. So anything that I could get my hands on that was cheap.
So you took the approach of your favorite beer was an open one.
Yeah, whatever I could get out of parties or whatnot. So people feared me when I showed up at parties.
And look at us now, the
Mhm.
two most boring people in the world. But we like it that
Absolutely.
way.
Yeah,
People like us for it.
I don't drink at all these days. Good thing for it.
All right, Dave. Difficult segue as it is. Let's talk to our friend Ben Goessling, who covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Minnesota Star Tribune, also on KFan 1003. I think I called it 103. It's 1003. Contributor there, also on the Access Vikings podcast. He spoke with us yesterday on Thursday, just after arriving in Dublin. So let's talk to Ben.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. As part of our Friday show, as promised, and as we do every week, we have a beat writer who covers the opposing team. And this week, of course, it is the Minnesota Vikings and the two teams squaring off in Dublin, Ireland on Sunday, early morning. Game going to be broadcast on the NFL Network. And with that, we are pleased to have back on the show. It's been 8 years since you last heard him on the Terrible Podcast. He covers the Vikings for the Minnesota Star Tribune, has done so for numerous years. He also has guest appearances on KFan in Minnesota, and he also is a co-host of a podcast, All Access Vikings, that you can find anywhere that you download your favorite podcast at. So with that, I am talking about Ben Goessling. Ben, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And Ben is also joining us from Dublin, Ireland. Just got over there as well, too. So we appreciate him making time in his itinerary there. Ben, welcome back to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.
Glad to be with you guys. I'm running on not 2 hours of sleep, so I'll give you what I got. If anything sounds sloppy, it's a good thing we're recording and we're not doing it live.
I hear you. I hear you. No issues there. We're just glad to have you back on. Ben, I know you've only been over there a couple of hours now and all. Sort of the feel coming out of there is this is kind of has a mini Super Bowl-like, I guess, feel to it over there. Is that the sense that you've gotten since you've landed over there? And what would you say kind of the early split is between Steelers fans and Vikings fans?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the split goes, it's a little hard to tell just walking around the streets. I mean, I think some of the estimates people have thrown out there would be 60-40, 60% Steelers fans, 40% Vikings fans. The vibe, though, it does feel different. I've done 4 London games dating back to that first one between the Steelers and Vikings at Wembley Stadium in 2013. And the London games always feel a little bit like, oh, this is a thing going on in the city, and that's interesting and curious. And the NFL kind of tries to make it a bigger deal. And those have gotten bigger, I think, over the years, but they never really feel like an event people are kind of talking about in the same way that this has felt like. When I landed, my cab driver was a guy that had played Gaelic football at Croke Park for years, and so we were talking about the differences between Gaelic football and rugby and both of those sports and American football, obviously. And he said the uh, the traffic, the excitement for the game is unlike a lot of things they see in Dublin, and trying to get a hotel over here was a lot harder than it typically is in London. It's a little smaller city, so that's going to be part of it. But there is, it feels to me like this is a little more of an event on a capital E event, so to speak, than I've seen it in London. And I suppose some of that in London is there's a lot of things to do. It's a big city. It's one of the most cosmopolitan cities in Europe, if not the world, and it's not going to be quite as singular in terms of its attention on any one thing. But yeah, this does, in my little bit of time here so far, it certainly feels different than that has been, and it'll be interesting to see how that develops throughout the week as probably more people get here closer to the game.
Ben, a couple little minor storylines on the Viking side heading into this one. They obviously get Jordan Addison back from his suspension this week, and that's one storyline. The team will obviously be without J.J. McCarthy for another game here, with Carson Wentz making a second consecutive start. So there's that aspect of it, and a little banged up, I believe, on the Viking side, specifically on offense. I know Donovan Jackson is left guard is supposed to miss this game. With a wrist injury, had surgery and all. I think Ryan Kelly is supposed to get back this week from his concussion and all. And then obviously the Vikings are not going to have running back Aaron Jones for this one as well too. How do you see? And I think one of my favorite guys, Van Ginkel, is a little banged up, but I think he's supposed to play. He played last week as well too. What's going to happen there at left guard with Donovan Jackson out? And do you expect Ryan Kelly to play? And what else is going on health-wise? And quick note here, we're recording this Thursday at noon Eastern time, so Ben obviously does not have the Thursday injury report as of yet.
Right. Yeah, it's a little bit of a work in progress with them, as it has been throughout the year so far. I think Andrew Van Ginkel has a good chance to play. It's a neck injury for him that he came into the season with, and that had the concussion that kept him out for the Falcons game a couple of weeks ago. Came back from that in time to play. I think it was only 8 snaps against the Bengals on Sunday, but he had 2 sacks in those 8 snaps, so it was a fairly brief but productive appearance for him.
Yeah.
I would expect I think there's a good chance, I should say, we'll see him. We need to probably see a little more of how the week goes there. But yeah, Ryan Kelly, I think, has a good chance to come back as well at center. Had sustained a concussion before that Falcons game, so he ends up missing, in the Falcons game, he ends up missing the Bengals game last week as a result of that concussion. And Kelly, I think that's the 4th in his career, so they need to be cautious with that. I mean, that has become something that has changed his career, and I think if you start talking about another one, you ask a lot of bigger questions about, is he going to keep doing this? But they are planning to have him, and then at left guard, it'll be Blake Brandel, who was their starting left guard last year, has played a number of different spots. In fact, came in at left tackle, kind of splitting some time with Christian Darrisaw in his first week back. He's a guy that they've worked at center. I mean, they kind of feel like they can play him anywhere. He's your classic swing lineman. That's really been what he's done best, is a guy that you can plug in wherever you have to do it. Big guy that will help more probably in the run game than in the pass game. He's not been quite as good in pass protection. In fact, that's part of the reason the Vikings wanted to go out and draft a guard in the first round, to improve with their pass protection up the middle. So how he does there, I think, is going to be interesting to watch. Once again, I think you're going to have your 3rd offensive line combination for the Vikings in 4 weeks. Wow. So they have not had a lot of continuity with that group, and it's a new center in Ryan Kelly. It's a new right guard in Will Fries. Obviously, Donovan Jackson in his first year as well. So there's been a lot of get-to-know-you time, and I would expect there'll probably be some of that again this week. So I would expect the Steelers will try to test that and say, here's some overload pressures, here's deceptive blitzes that you have to figure out who's passing off whom to, pick up and in a blitz package, and then a running back comes into that sometimes as well. And Aaron Jones has been pretty good in pass protection. Jordan Mason has done a decent job there as well, and we'll see him do more of it on Sunday. But it's just a lot of points where everybody has to be on the same page, and when you haven't had that time together, I do think that's something the Vikings they would like to see change. They would like to see that group get healthy and have the investments they made on that offensive line all be on the field at the same time, but they will not have that on Sunday. And I think that's an area where the Steelers probably, again, will try to test the integrity of that group and see what they are able to manage. Otherwise, the Steelers may have some opportunities to pressure Carson Wentz as a result of that.
And at that shifting left guard spot, Minnesota taking on Cam Hayward, coming off a great game in week number 3.
Yeah.
Ben, speaking of injuries, obviously the quarterback change, J.J. McCarthy goes down, Carson Wentz steps in, plays well against Cincinnati. I know it's just a one-game sample size, but has the offense shifted at all schematically, philosophically from McCarthy to a veteran like Carson Wentz?
Well, I think the thing that was different last week is they just got more efficient in terms of getting the ball out quickly. I think on the plays where Wentz was not pressured, his average time to throw was just under 2 seconds, and that was not happening with J.J. McCarthy. It was a lot of holding the ball for 3+ seconds, even in a clean pocket. And some of that is a young quarterback that's still processing where to go with reads and trying to figure out where he should go with the ball. But that doesn't work when you have people missing on the offensive line. You're asking a lot of people to hold up that maybe aren't cut out to do it. And the fact that Christian Darrisaw was back last week certainly made it easier for Carson Wentz, and I think that'll continue to be the case with him back at left tackle. But that was the biggest thing I noticed is the decisiveness. And Kevin O'Connell also talked about the footwork, which I think was a bit of a coaching point to J.J. McCarthy. I think you hear him talk all the time about tying your feet and eyes together. Where are you looking? And then are your feet following exactly where your eyes are? He felt good about the way Wentz went through reads, kept his feet where they needed to be, and then threw from a solid foundation so that he's able to drive the ball. I mean, we've seen J.J. McCarthy, for the most part, do that through training camp, but I think there have been some moments in games where he's throwing from a little bit of an off-balance platform, and sometimes you have to do that, but they don't want him doing that more than is necessary. And I think some of those things you heard Kevin O'Connell praise about Carson Wentz were for an audience of one. I think it was for a little bit of a – they've said these things to J.J. McCarthy too, and
Sure.
he's the first one to say, hey, this is something I can pick up from this. And Josh McCown, their quarterback's coach, was pretty excited about how willing McCarthy was to take this as an opportunity to learn. But yeah, I think a lot of those things are where you see the difference with Carson Wentz. And it was nothing spectacular. He didn't make a ton of revelatory plays, had a nice throw to Justin Jefferson before halftime, but a lot of it was just getting rid of the ball and letting the Vikings weapons, and they have a lot of them, do their jobs. And I think as you get Jordan Addison back this week, you'll see even more of that. Just as Kevin O'Connell put it, you're playing point guard. Get the ball to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Jalen Naylor's come on, Adam Thielen, so on and so forth. They have a lot of people to get the ball to, and it's better in their hands than it is in the quarterbacks. So a lot of it will be a matter of quick releases, try to beat pressure that way and get the ball to the people that need to have it to make things happen.
If I could ask a quick twofold question for this offense. You spoke about Addison, first game back from the suspension. Will he be full go? Will there be some sort of snap count he's on as he gets his conditioning and legs under him? And then the running back, Jordan Mason, not a household name. Tell Steeler fans about him. Seems like a good runner, maybe not the receiver Aaron Jones is, but Minnesota seems confident in Mason being the guy.
Yeah, Addison played through the preseason. This was a suspension dating back to a July 2024 arrest for drunken driving charge outside LAX, and he pleaded it down over the summer, and then the NFL came in with their suspension after that, as they typically do. The fact that he's been able to be in the building, these things work differently now, as I've learned over the course of this. He had to be out of the building for the first of those 3 weeks, but players can now be in the building for the second and third weeks of the suspension, which meant he was able to work out in the building. He's able to be around teammates, and I think they feel like it's good for the player so he doesn't feel as isolated, but it's also just good for a little bit more continuity as the player is at least able to be around and kind of be connecting with teammates. So I think I would bet it'll be a little lighter workload for him than we would typically see. I don't know that you'll see him at 90% of the snaps or anything like that, which is probably about where he normally will be. But I do think he'll get a decent chunk of work because he played through the preseason. I think he's had a good chance to keep doing some conditioning through this suspension, and he had a fantastic training camp and preseason. I mean, really, he connected. Part of it was Justin Jefferson had the hamstring injury, but Jordan Addison was probably J.J. McCarthy's favorite target in camp. And we've seen it with him throughout the last couple of years. The body control is really good. For a 5'10 receiver, he's more physical than you'd expect. He stands up to press coverage fairly well, tracks the ball well in the air, makes a lot of downfield catches as a result of that. And he's got the long speed to make things happen downfield. So him coming back, I do think is a big boost for this offense because you see so many teams key on Justin Jefferson and basically dare anybody else to beat them. And they have not had the receivers that can do that quite to the degree that Jordan Addison can. I think Jalen Naylor has done some good things. He's had some chances to get open downfield. Has made a few plays. He's had a couple of opportunities where the quarterback missed him that could have gone for a big gain, but he's not what Addison is, and Adam Thielen hasn't been as big of a factor. I just don't know that he is separating quite as well as he used to do. I wonder about health a little bit there too, but whether it's Naylor or Thielen, I don't think those players are quite as dynamic as Addison is, and you add him to that group while you still have all those other pieces. I think it makes a big difference. So I think they'll use him as much as they can. And then as far as Jordan Mason goes, traded for him from the 49ers this offseason, did it in March. They wanted another running back to go with Aaron Jones, who's 30 years old. They wanted somebody that is a little younger and probably a little more physical. They have not been good at running the ball in goal-to-go situations or third and short situations. So they wanted somebody that is a little more of a downhill runner. He does some other things as well, but that's something that you see an immediate difference with. In fact, last week, I think he became the first Vikings running back under Kevin O'Connell to have 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in a game, which is, it's a nice day, but it's not, we're not talking about Adrian Peterson in his prime level production here. It's not the most audacious standard to meet. So the fact that nobody's done it tells you how little they've run the ball with Kevin O'Connell, and B, how ineffective they've been at doing it. So they do, I think, have plans to incorporate it a little bit more this season. And so they saw it last week. I think we'll see it again as they, kind of try to find ways to support Carson Wentz. I think Jordan Mason will be pretty involved in the run game again on Sunday.
Ben, a lot of teams are running away from TJ Watt for obvious reasons, and the Steelers have had some trouble with teams running to the offense's left so far. We've already talked a little bit about we're going to have a different left guard in there, and obviously on top of it, there Christian Darrisaw made his return back to the field last week. He only played third. What was the deal with him? Did they just, because it was a blowout, did they get him out of the game, or was he on a pitch count there with Darrisaw at left tackle?
Well, basically what they had planned to do, I don't know that it was a concrete pitch count, but what they told him before the game, because it had kind of been this negotiation of when do you feel comfortable enough? He tore his ACL last October against the Rams, and they'd kind of given him a 12-month timetable to get back. So he was already a little bit ahead of that, but it was this kind of discussion of, hey, medical staff feels like you're ready to go, but we need you to make sure you're comfortable doing it. And as they'd gone through that for a couple of weeks, what they essentially told him was, we're gonna try it, but if there's a point at which you say, I'm good, I feel like I've hit my limit for the day, you have the option to kind of say, give me the eject button, so to speak. So they ended up playing him through the first half and then a little bit into the third quarter. But yes, by that point, they're up by so much that I think they said, let's get you out of the game and kind of use this as a step in the right direction, but also not stress anything more than you need to do it. So, yeah, I think they will continue to see him ramp up. And the fact now that Blake Brandell has to start at left guard, I would imagine the plan is for him to go the whole way. It'll be probably Justin School if Darrisaw needs to come out for any reason, but Justin School has struggled this season, and I don't think they want him having to deal with TJ Watt on Sunday. So if you're running away from TJ Watt, I mean, I suppose it'll be more Brian O'Neill in passing situations, but if you're running away from him, you want that left side with Darrisaw and Brandell to be as effective as possible. And that's a pretty physical tandem if they have them both. So I would expect that they'll try to get, I mean, Darisaw moves well for a guy as big
Right.
as he is. And I think they'll try to get him out in the front of some things and try to get some plays working off of that, especially if they can kind of minimize the impact of TJ Watt in those situations.
Want to switch it over to the other side of the football. Brian Flores needs no introduction to Steelers fans. A lot of
Yeah.
fans are upset that he ultimately didn't become the defensive coordinator in Pittsburgh. He's done a fantastic job over there in Minnesota so far, and just how multiple he is, the way he's able to have the pre and post snap movement is just incredible. It's like an organized circus act when you watch it on the All 22 there. And then you go back to last year, one of the storylines, I think, kind of in this game or heading into this game is Aaron Rodgers last year with the Jets versus the Vikings. And obviously with Flores being the defensive coordinator there, it was quite arguably Aaron Rodgers' worst game of the season last year. 3 interceptions in that game, was sacked 3 times. Do you remember offhand what stuck out to you about what Flores did defensively in that game against the Jets that caused Aaron Rodgers so many issues?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of things in that game. I mean, the big play in that game was Andrew Van Ginkel basically kind of doing a coffee house blitz where he's stepping towards the line and then drops back into coverage, knowing exactly the throwing lanes that Rodgers is going to have. Because essentially what they were trying to do is make Rodgers say, okay, I'm going to be hot here. I'm going to look for my hot read. And then Van Ginkel jumped into the lane where he knew Rodgers was going to be throwing it, picked it off, I think ran it back 63 yards for a touchdown. Was the second touchdown of the year for Van Ginkel in like week 5. Van Ginkel was a quarterback in high school, and you can tell he sees the game that way. He had one against Daniel Jones in the first game of the season where he jumped a screen from the 10-yard line and took it back for a touchdown. And he's done that, has almost done that a couple more times, almost had one against the Lions last year, and I think almost had another pick against the Bears. So he is pretty intuitive at knowing where quarterbacks are going to go with the ball and being able to make plays off of that. But a lot of what they did is what you see Brian Flores do quite a bit. The coverages change. The pressures come from just about anywhere, whether it's Harrison Smith or Josh Metellus, their safety that they use something, a little bit more like a linebacker. Jonathan Grenard, Dallas Turner, Blake Cashman won't play in this one, but they'll have Van Ginkel and Ivan Pace will get involved in the blitzes as well. And then they added Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen to the front. So they will bring pressure in a lot of different ways, and they're not afraid to bring a lot of it. I mean, that's always used to be the thing with Aaron Rodgers is blitz him at your own peril because he's seen it all and he can beat it all. But I think with this group, and then probably just Rodgers not as mobile as he used to be, you're going to see them test him. And the funny thing with Flores, too, is that this style of defense, he's always been pretty heavy on pressure, but some of the hot coverages they play, these vision blitzes where you bring more guys and you have guys in zone coverage, but you're not covering every last thing. He got that idea from Pitt when he was with the Steelers, sharing that building as the Steelers do with Pitt. He started talking with Pat Narduzzi about a lot of the things that Pitt runs and brought those things to the NFL. Really, nobody had done that in the NFL quite to that degree. But that time in Pittsburgh that Flores had, that year in Pittsburgh, it was very instrumental to this Vikings defense looking like it does now. So I'm sure that probably doesn't help if Steelers fans are already missing him, but you can certainly thank his time in Pittsburgh for what the Vikings defense looks like now.
We sure wish Tomlin and Terrell Austin would talk to him there in the building because they're so static on the back end in Pittsburgh. And it's just amazing to see Flores do what he does with some of these rotations on the tape there. Alex, go ahead.
Pittsburgh should get royalties for each sack against Aaron Rodgers this weekend. We'll be asking for that. But Ben, you talk about this defense. It's a really good unit. It's a really talented, cohesive unit. It's probably not a star-studded unit. Some of the names you mentioned are not necessarily big household names. Who is a key, underrated nucleus part of that defense that NFL fans at large may not be familiar with?
Well, Jonathan Grenard is their top pass rusher, and that's not a name that a lot of people are going to know. He was a Pro Bowler last year, I believe. Andrew Van Ginkel was a second-team All-Pro, but these are not guys that everybody is sitting here talking about, like a TJ Watt or a Myles Garrett, who the Vikings are going to see in a week, or Aiden Hutchinson, Micah Parsons. These guys aren't being talked about that way, but they have a lot of different ways to bring pressure. And the thing that Grenard does really well is you'll see him line up at outside linebacker primarily. I mean, he's a 3-4 edge rusher. They'll put him in a 4-3 with his hand down in passing situations at times, but his ability to get off the ball is pretty remarkable. And it's, I think, gone even to a little bit different level this year. He was one of the guys that playoff loss last year, you could tell really sat with him in a way that he didn't want to go through that again. I had a conversation with him about that in training camp. It just was, kind of putting voice to a thing that I think a lot of players feel, where it's you put in all these months and weeks of work and it's done that fast. That was something, the phrase he started repeating to players and I think putting on social media is more is required. And he came into camp yeah, with an edge that I have not seen out of him. I mean, it was every day in camp. He was wrecking practices, and the Vikings defense was not holding back to make life easier for JJ McCarthy in his first year as a starting quarterback. It was, we're going to throw everything at you, and we're going to chirp after every time we make a play. And quite often, that was Jonathan Grenard doing a lot of the chirping. So he has been playing uh, like a guy on a mission for a lot of this year. And I think he's a lot of the key to this whole thing, making it work. And you'll see him, I think, in the backfield quite a bit. And he certainly has the speed and the motor to get after Aaron Rodgers, I think, on Sunday. So that's a name that I would expect Steelers fans will probably be hearing on the broadcast a decent amount.
Well, hopefully not from the Steeler fans' perspective. My last question for you, Ben, then I'll let Dave finish things up. Minnesota's 4-0 in international games, beat Rodgers in London last year, playing the back-to-back games this year. Has there been a secret for why this team succeeds so much under those difficult conditions of playing abroad?
Well, I've wondered about that a lot because it's 4-0 over three different head coaches. And Leslie Frazier was the first one against the Steelers in 13, and they beat the Browns in 17. And then it's been Kevin O'Connell for the last two against the Saints and the Jets, and they will get the repeat matchups with the Steelers and the Browns this year, although those are obviously very different situations than it was when the Vikings were playing those teams, almost 8 to 12 years ago at this point. But I think certainly under O'Connell, it has been a willingness to embrace it. There's been, I think, let's try to figure out how to make this work in terms of getting players acclimated to the time change. I mean, really, the interesting thing here was when the NFL approached them with this, the immediate reaction was, you want us to do what? But then as they thought about it, it was, well, if we can handle the first game, which means it's not in Pittsburgh, it's in something closer to a neutral environment. You're not dealing with cold weather, possibly, if it's in Pittsburgh later in the season. And then they're already acclimated to the time zone change because they practice here all next week while the Browns come over later in the week. So I think they thought, if we can take out potentially two tough road venues for something resembling neutral site, including the second game in a building that they've played in twice in the last 3 years, they kind of said, yeah, let's do it. Because a lot of it is they put faith in Tyler Williams, who's the head of their medical and sports performance staff. They've spent a lot of time just figuring out, what's the right pattern to get players acclimated quickly, to kind of work with circadian rhythms and time zone changes and all of this kind of stuff. And how much does that go into the results on the field? It's hard to say that. I don't know that you could say definitively that they've figured that out completely, but they've had a process that's worked for them. I mean, the first year that they did this under Kevin O'Connell, they did not take their bye week after the London game. They came back home and then beat the Bears the next Sunday. So I think they became the first team in NFL history to win games in different countries, or at least different continents, back-to-back weeks. So they have, I think, developed enough of a process that they're comfortable with it, and they're not afraid of it because their ownership wants to be in these spots. I think it's something that the ownership has taken a little bit of a leading role in with the NFL. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are doing this. Certainly the Rooneys are the big reason that this game is in Ireland this weekend, but the Vikings have been, I feel like there are certain teams that say yes to this a little more eagerly than others. And the Vikings have been one of the teams that have said yes to playing abroad. And I think some of that is they feel like their operational staff, from Kevin O'Connell to Tyler Williams to just the people that help get everything over here and make players feel comfortable. I think they have a lot of confidence in those people, and they're willing to kind of roll the dice on that when these opportunities come up.
Ben, a couple more from me, and then I'll get your score prediction for this game here. In the first three games here, we've talked about, the pass defense has been really, really good for the Vikings. Against the run, it's been kind of some up and down, the down mostly being against the Falcons in that game a couple of weeks ago there. I've watched the full all 22 of last week's game with Wentz. Watched just a little bit of the Falcons all 22. I'll get into that a little bit more before game time, but what stood out to me, Bijan Robinson obviously is a very, very good back, and it felt like, at least on tape, that there was more Bijan Robinson than it was anything else. Is that kind of your takeaway from that game? What was the big hiccup in the Vikings run defense in that contest?
Yeah, I mean, Bijan Robinson certainly was a big factor in that game. I mean, that he does some things that not many other people are going to be able to do, but they did not tackle well in that game either. And how much of that is Bijan Robinson making people miss because he's just as twitchy as he is? That's part of it, I think. But they also had some spots where I think they got a little overeager, probably over pursued some things, overshot some gaps, and then didn't wrap up when they had opportunities to do it. I think that was the thing they came out of that game really focusing on, was being better with tackling. And then you also saw it last week where it was, well, tackling is great, but if you have opportunities to punch the ball out,
Yeah.
better. I mean, they did that extremely well last week, to the point where Isaiah Rodgers scores 2 touchdowns in the game and wins NFC Defensive Player of the Week. So the tackling was a big flaw, I think, in that Falcons game, and they're a little healthier now with Harrison Smith and Andrew Van Ginkel back as well, but they'll have to do it well on Sunday again. I mean, I think if they have tackling issues, if those are things that come up from different points of the season, that's going to get them in trouble. So it was a lot of that, and I think that's something they're going to have to continue to make sure they're cleaning up.
Even with Jordan Addison back this week, Carson Wentz, at least in recent time here, not really one that's able to complete. I think you have to go back to a couple of years ago to his last completion of more than 20 air yards down the field. Now, obviously, against the Bengals, they got off to the big lead. I think Wentz had like 6 pass attempts and maybe 7 dropbacks or something like that in the second half. So they really didn't need him to really push the football down the field. They did have a couple of nice drives. The opening one was nice. Had a couple of 10, 12 play drives or whatnot, but really a lot of more short intermediate stuff in there. Is there a concern in this one about his ability, if needed, to push the football down the field, even with having Jordan Addison back?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I mean, there were some times last week where you could tell they were trying to take a shot. I mean, the drop back and just where he's looking, they wanted to take shots downfield, and then he ends up checking it down because it's not there. Um, I think it's a fair question because Kevin O'Connell likes to push the ball down the field.
All right.
Yeah, and it's a West Coast offense. It's the Sean McVay type stuff, and that dates back to Shanahan, Kubiak. You go even further back to Bill Walsh in the roots of it. But this is different than a lot of West Coast schemes in the sense that they want chunk plays. They want to push the ball vertically quite a bit, and it's not something that Carson Wentz has done a lot of lately. I think they feel like he can do it if he needs to, but you're probably not going to see as much of it as you would have certainly. I mean, last year they were doing it all the time with Sam Darnold, and I think they want to do that with J.J. McCarthy as well. But the trick to that is you have to protect well enough, and you have to have guys separate. And I think especially if you are in a situation where you have backups on the offensive line, that maybe means Josh Oliver, their big second tight end, is staying in to pass protect a little more often. Maybe you have a running back there. And if it's a 3-man concept in a route, are you going to be able to find something downfield that opens up if you're, keeping 7 in to block 4 or 5 just because you feel like you need the extra help? I think some of those things take away from the ability to push the ball downfield, in addition to just the way Wentz has played. But yeah, it was a noticeable difference last week. They did not stretch things vertically as much as they typically have done, and as much as Kevin O'Connell wants to do. And I would expect that they'll look for some opportunities, but you're probably not going to see as much of that from them as you would certainly would have seen last year, and probably even with Kirk Cousins, they wanted to do more of that.
All right, Ben, we're going to put you on the spot here. This won't air. This won't get released until about noon Eastern time on Friday there. So, and I know you got a couple of injury reports that you're waiting on there. So we won't hold you to it unless you're wrong. But what is this 16-6 or what? What's your feel? What's the final score prediction on this one, Ben?
I'm going to take the Vikings to win this one. I'm going to go 21-17. I think that defense makes the difference against Rodgers. I mean, who's going to cover DK Metcalf, I think is going to be interesting to watch. I think they'll have a lot of different coverage packages for him. And I'm sure Rodgers will make some plays. Rodgers had a chance to bring the Jets back in that game in London last year. Almost did it until Stephon Gilmore picked him off at the end. So I think it'll be tight. I think they'll have some moments where Rodgers keeps the Steelers in it and makes things tough on the Vikings. But I just think that defense, with the ways it can get after Rodgers, we saw it last year, and I think it's even better equipped to do it this year. I think the defense makes enough of a difference for the Vikings to come out but I think it'll be close. I think it'll be kind of a gritty game, but I'm going to take the Vikings 21-17.
All right, and tell Steeler fans real quick what they can find from you over at the Star Tribune the next couple of days.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll have kind of the postcard from Dublin here, landed here today, and then Vikings will practice on Friday out here. So kind of looking at what's gone into the operational side of all this, some of the things we mentioned, the team having to get everybody over here and get things through to two different countries is kind of a unique endeavor. So we're going to write about that a little bit, and then game previews. My Access Vikings newsletter comes out on Fridays. If people are ever interested in that, that's free. You can sign up for that. The link is on my socials. Comes out at noon on Fridays. So that'll have, kind of an insider analysis piece on what's coming, and then some mailbag section and some different things as well. So be a lot of different opportunities to consume things if you're interested in that, whether it's from myself or Andrew Kramer or Emily Liker. We've got a whole crew covering the Vikings and podcast videos. It's all there in pretty much whatever form you would like to consume it. So if you're interested in those things, you can find them at startribune.com for the most part, or just look on my socials.
Right, and on socials, you on all of them, on Blue Sky, on Twitter, on Threads, IG. I believe it's all the same username, and that's Ben Goessling. So Ben, look, we know how tough it is. We know you got a busy itinerary there. We appreciate you making time this week for the Terrible Podcast to help us get ready for the Vikings versus Steelers on Sunday in Dublin, Ireland. Enjoy your couple of weeks overseas over there. And we'll catch up with you the next time that these two teams get together. We appreciate you being on once again.
Yeah, let's do it in 2029, if not before. Maybe there'll be a 27 if it's the same place in the division, but let's not wait another 8 years. We'll make sure we do it sooner next time.
You're a great guest. Thanks for being on, Ben.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. Our special thanks to Ben Goessling for his time, and he was pretty jet lagged, and so we really appreciate him accommodating us on the schedule. Be sure to follow him on Twitter at Ben Goessling. That is Goessling. Again, Minnesota Star Tribune beat writer, also appearances on KFan 1003 and the Access Vikings podcast. Dave, really appreciate Ben's time.
Yeah, look, we went into this week kind of wondering if we were going to be able to get anybody from the Vikings due to the travel and all like that. And I just took a shot at Ben because we had him on the show 8 years ago. And he probably didn't even remember that, I don't think. And he was very accommodating for us. We did have to move it to Thursday right after he got into Dublin there. So very, very thankful. And I know Margie's out there listening. Margie will do this. Reach out to Ben and thank him for his time. It'd be nice if a few others of you that are on social media would reach out to him as well and thank him for his time, because as stated, they're going, the travel itinerary and this being a big deal with the game over in Ireland. We were blessed to be able to get him, and then we had him for like 35 minutes as well too, and he gave long, detailed answers, and just appreciative of that.
Absolutely. I just seeing on my Twitter timeline players speaking after arriving in Ireland. Don't believe anyone saying anything too crazy. Cam Hayward speaking. Rogers, as I mentioned, the team holding some sort of walkthrough. It looks like a true walkthrough. They're in t-shirts and shorts with the Gaelic, their names in Gaelic, I guess, on the back, which is a really cool touch from the equipment staff.
Absolutely.
All right, Dave, let's talk about this game for all the, like I said, pomp and circumstance. It's a game to be played, and ultimately the flight back will feel a whole lot better with a win than with a loss. So Minnesota coming into this game at 2-1, as does Pittsburgh. There's an Irish theme to this game, of course, in placement, but also the teams, the Rooneys. You got Kevin O'Connell, the Vikings head coach, his Irish roots. So putting all that aside, though, Dave, to the team itself, Minnesota quality unit starting Carson Wentz, the veteran, with J.J. McCarthy out of this game. Let's start with that Vikings offense. What sticks out to you on tape?
First and foremost, Carson Wentz didn't have to do a lot. Now, they did have a nice opening script there, I thought, against the Bengals, and were able to mix in some run and some pass within that and march down there. But the other aspect is he was getting the ball out quicker than J.J. McCarthy had in the first two games. This is a Carson Wentz that I think you got to go back to a couple of years ago, the last time he completed an air yard pass of over 20 yards or more, and he really didn't have a lot of challenging throws overall in this game. I think most notably of the couple of third downs, less than either right at 7 yards or less than 7 yards that he completed in this game, I think both went to touchdowns and both went to tight ends not named TJ Hawkinson, if I believe. One was kind of and both of them down in the red zone. One was kind of a sit route against the zone that was short of the goal line. That was an easy yak after the catch there. And I think the other one, two tight ends, I think to one side, and one of them ran kind of like a Texas angle route back to the inside for an easy pitch and catch there. So once again, I think he had to attempt something like 14 passes or something in the first half, but was sacked twice, I think, in the first half. Overall, you got to make him hold the football. The longer that he holds the football, even though Carson Wentz does have some level of mobility to him at his age, he's not going to be a guy looking to take off with the football much, like we saw with Drake May against the Patriots there. So you've got to. I'm less worried about the deep ball stuff, even though I would imagine they're going to take a couple of shots in this game. I would like to see the Steelers potentially play as much man as possible in this, especially against weapons like Jefferson and Jordan Addison being back, but it all starts up front. We got to see this defense put this Vikings offense in 3rd and 5 or longer type situations, because that's going to be the best chance to get off the field. Because once again, the Vikings have not been great on 3rd down overall, and even in 3rd and 5 or longer situations last week with Wentz, they weren't great unless they were in down deep in the opposition's end there. So you got to stop the run game early, and I imagine they're going to do this. It's hard to kind of pick through these games because you've had two different quarterbacks, one very inexperienced one and one veteran one in the first 3 games. Seemed like they used now look, they're a heavy 11 personnel team overall, but you've seen some smattering, especially I think with McCarthy when he was playing of some 2 tight end situations. And I do wonder, because of the Steelers, look, I'm hoping they come out with a lot of 11, because that would pull the Steelers out of base in early down situations. But I do kind of wonder with the struggles that the Steelers have had in base, if we might see them. And look, Jordan Addison's bound to be on some sort of snap count in his first game back. So I would imagine you're going to see them come out with a little bit more heavier personnel in early down situations, because I think they do want to run the football and not have Carson Wentz have to drop back a lot in this game overall. So, and potentially play the field position battle and put their defense out on the field and potentially try to get some takeaways. But they will try to run the football. I will imagine they'll try to run away from TJ Watt. And they'll try to get themselves into third and manageable situations, and they'll try to get the ball out of Carson Wentz's hand as soon as possible.
We'll see on Addison. Ben talked about there'll probably be some level of snap count on him, but maybe not dramatically so, considering it was only a 3-week suspension. He played in the preseason. He's been in the building the last 2 weeks. Couldn't practice until this week, but we'll see if this guy's able to play a little bit more than maybe I mean, Derek Carman played more than we expected after missing a month of action and with an injury, and Addison was healthy. So we'll see exactly where that snap count comes in at. I don't want to spend much time dwelling on hypotheticals that ultimately mean nothing, but would you have rather face J.J. McCarthy in this game than Carson Wentz?
Yes.
Me too. Me too. The good news is at least Wentz is not. This is not the first game you're seeing of Wentz in Minnesota. You have the tape on him against Cincinnati last week, so there's some understanding of whatever minor tweaks and changes were made to the offense with a veteran like Wentz versus a first-year starter in McCarthy. As Ben talked about, the snap-to-throw times were a big difference between McCarthy and Wentz. McCarthy, before going down, 3.15 seconds. That was the third longest in the NFL. Wentz last week, 2.55 seconds. That would have been the second fastest in the NFL, only behind Patrick Mahomes. It's a 1-week sample size. They played with the lead. That certainly helps. Snap to throw times, not in third and long and deep drops and that kind of stuff. But when seeing the field better, getting the ball out quicker, and for Pittsburgh, you'd rather that quarterback that's willing to hold on to the football, maybe make some mistakes.
I can't help when I think of Carson Wentz, particularly when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, way back when was I don't know if it was I think it was his rookie year. When he was with who was it? The
Eagles?
Right. But back then I think LeBeau, we were playing a lot of zone, and he just came out and just took the easy stuff. I think a lot of RPO stuff in that way back in there, and they just let him just paper cut the living what out of them, and they never really adjusted to that throughout the game, and they obviously went on to lose that game. I would like, if the Steelers are going to lose this game, I would like us to have to talk about, man, Carson Wentz won this game because of having to beat a lot of one-on-one coverage, a lot of tight window throws, a lot of big time throws in this game. If you just play a lot of zone against him, he's seen that enough throughout his time that he's going to probably be able to pick this out, especially with the weapons that he has in Jefferson and Addison, and some good, you got a good tight end over there in Hawkinson as well. So I would like the storyline to be, if the Steelers somehow lose this game, is that, man, can you believe the game Carson Wentz, he completed 24 of 29 pass attempts. He's only sacked once in this game, and man, he was able to just drill the Steelers, especially in more man type situations there. It feels like that's the only, even though any loss is bad, at least it would be, man, Wentz played a hell of a game,
Yeah, that was his third career start. You referenced a 34-3 win over the Steelers back in 2016. Wentz was 23 of 31 for 301 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, no sacks. Darren Sproles had a field day, a long 73-yard touchdown in that game and blew Pittsburgh out. So hoping don't get an encore performance. They're my overall thoughts here on Minnesota. The run game, it's downhill. It's more duo and man blocking scheme, a little less zone scheme. Jordan Mason, now the lead back with Aaron Jones getting hurt, acquired from San Francisco this offseason. So I've seen more 12 personnel, getting the tight ends involved, but really just kind of more downhill. Pretty, quote unquote, kind of plain run game, but it has been relatively successful for them, at least more recently. It's not their big calling card, but they have a decent balance offensively. In the pass game, you kind of get a little New England flair, a lot of 3-by-1 formations with a tight end backside. Hawkinson, obviously a big pass game threat. He was coming off the injury midway through 2024 and trying to get healthy and get acclimated. So he's kind of 2 years out now and looking a whole lot better, I think. So Patriots will run those 3-by-1 sets with Hunter Henry backside. Hawkinson will be the same. Minnesota, though, on that trip side, will use kind of a loose bunch where they're going to have not a true tightly bunch with a point man, but kind of a looser together clump. And they're going to run switch releases, and we have a pretty good route tree off of that. So distributing those routes and being able to carry those routes and communicating is going to be key. Of course, you're facing Jefferson and Addison. Jalen Nailor's been good in the catch and run game for them. So I think handling those 3-by-1 formations are going to be really key for Pittsburgh's coverage and secondary.
Yeah, and got to tackle the catch with these guys in Addison and Jefferson as well too, because they're the type guys and that can take the short one and go yard with it too. So the biggest component to me though is you got to keep them in third and long situations. Make Carson Wentz, because he'll take some ugly sacks still and hold on to the football.
He was sacked 3 times last week,
right?
Despite blowout win.
So you've got to force him into situations where he's holding the ball a little bit longer there, and hopefully this pass rush can get to him. So I would like to see the Steelers. Look, if he wants to take off and run a couple times, let him do it. Just make sure you try to get a pretty decent pop on him if you can there. But not the running threat. I don't think that Drake May was and all. So you got to stop the run early here. I imagine they're going to come out trying to run the football, like I said, and we've got to see the Steelers defense get off the field, especially in third and long situations, and not allow Minnesota to get these fourth and manageable type situations where they'll have a propensity to maybe go for it.
Obviously, you want and expect and need TJ Watt, Nick Herbig, the outside linebackers, to have good games, but the Vikings tackles are really strong. Brian O'Neill, pick guy. Christian Darrisaw, he returned last week. He should play full, as Ben spoke about. So can that interior rush for Pittsburgh be the catalyst? They got a backup left guard in. I think Ryan Kelly's going to play for them. He's gone through concussion protocol, probably gets fully cleared here soon, but that interior offensive line, not as good as a tackle. So can Pittsburgh stunt more? That'll be key. But can Cam Hayward be as dominant as he was last week? I think that's kind of where Pittsburgh needs to win. Can Keanu Benton make some plays? Of course, Derek Carmen coming back, Wyatt Black. Winning on those guards and centers, I think, will be the real key for Pittsburgh.
And look, Cam Hayward's got as favorable as a matchup as it comes with the backup left guard in there.
Yeah, who was it again? It was Blake Brandel.
Who was it?
Yeah, Blake Brandel. That was what Brandon said. Now, he was their starter last year. He's gone in the backup role this year, but will move back into the lineup with Donovan Jackson being out. So he's a vet. He's not, some wide-eyed guy drafted in 2020, but obviously you would give the advantage to Pittsburgh there. You would hope.
Yeah, and Ryan Kelly coming off the concussion. And look, I think interior is where you've got to win within this game. And so it sets up for a nice game for Harmon potentially and Derek and Cam Hayward.
Who's over there at right guard for them? Will Fries. He was a big acquisition from the Colts this offseason in that hot guard market. But yeah, it's a good offensive line, but I think the tackles are the lead roles in this one, the lead actors, really good guys. And so, you want Watt and company to win, but I'm looking for Hayward and Harmon especially to eat in this one. One other stat I noticed about Minnesota that I thought was really curious, Dave, over the last 2 games, they have false started 7 times, and they played both those games at home. So 7 home false starts. I don't know if that's all from the offensive line. I'd have to double check. I think maybe 1 or 2 with some receiver or a tight end. But even though this is a neutral site game, you would expect more Steeler fans than Vikings fans. The loose calculations have been 60-40 split based on just observations from those who are in Dublin right now. Can you stem the front? Can you do some things to stress the offensive line that might kind of goad them into some false starts, because they've been jumpy these last 2 weeks?
Where they have made their hay in the running game so far, left in, they're averaging 6.31 yards per gain on 16 carries so far. So, and that obviously would be away, most times more than not, away from TJ Watt. They also, to the right guard, only 5 carries to the right guard side, averaging 10.8 yards per carry. So the rest of it, they're kind of middling to below average with their running game.
All right, so I'm going to imagine they're going to stick with the game plan of going to the left.
Yep, I think that's a safe bet.
Any other final thoughts here on the offense, Dave?
Got to get some takeaways in this one, obviously. Got to force Wentz into some interceptions here. Once again, if the Steelers lose this, hopefully the storyline is Wentz played a hell of a game. If it's anything other than that, then it's going to be very disappointing.
Minnesota did try a trick play end of the first half against Cincinnati, a double pass. That came off, I think, a turnover the first play after, tried to get the receiver to throw it back to the running back. I think it failed, but just want to note that there might be some tricks in Kevin O'Connell's bag this week.
All right.
Flipping over to the Vikings defense, and of course, we think about the Vikings defense. We think about Brian Flores, the one-time Steelers coach, all the chaos and everything he brings. How do you combat that, Dave? What do you start?
You better be able to run the football. And I kind of hinted on this earlier in the show here. They are susceptible to the run. Now, especially you go back and you watch that Atlanta Falcons tape right out of the chute. Atlanta was able to run on them. Now, Bijan Robinson is a great back, but there was push from the Atlanta Falcons up the middle on that. They did real good job on combination blocks. Javon Hargrave's not the same Javon Hargrave. Javon Hargrave, where he kills you is in the pass rush these days. It feels like more than anything. They are susceptible to runs up the middle, and specifically, throughout this game against Atlanta, he was getting pushed around a lot. And, I thought Bijan did make some good cuts. He made a lot of his own yardage in this game, but you've got to come out and try to push Javon Hargrave around. We've got to see the Steelers running game finally come alive in this one, because once again, the Vikings are so good in second and long and third and long situations. Flores, as Mike Tomlin said, will treat second and longs like third and longs. They're going to throw the kitchen sink at you in second and third and long situations, and it's hard to imagine that defense not getting off the field, especially in third and long situations. 1 of 18 conversions against them on 3rd and 7 or longer type situations so far. Even on 3rd and 5 or longer situations, I believe offenses are 5 of 25 against them. So if the Steelers are unable to run the football, it's going to make for a long day. You've got to get in 3rd and manageable situations, and then you've got to convert these. The Steelers obviously have not had great luck pushing the football down the field so far. I would imagine while there will be some shots taken in this game, if they don't hit those, they're going to have to win the small ball game. They're going to have to win out on the edges with the screen game, with the quick slants. The Steelers are at top of the league where it comes at yards after the catch so far through 3 games. That could play a big component in this one as well too. But it all starts on the early downs here with the Steelers, and specifically they're going to have to run the mid zone and be able to run it up the middle, and against Javon Hargrave specifically there. If they're not able to do this, this is going to make for a very, very long game defensively when it comes to it's like an organized circus act when it comes to their secondary. Man, it's hard to know what identity they are. Cover 6, cover 2, cover 3. Sometimes you sit there for 10 minutes trying to diagnose what the coverage is because of what they do pre-snap and post-snap with them. I found myself several times, is that cover 6? Because of all the movement within that, and they're not afraid to blitz out of on any down and distance. They'll run blitz you. There's just so much chaos, and it's organized chaos for them, something that Steeler fans are just not used to seeing when it comes to their own defense here. And man, you can't help but go back to the last year game against the Jets and the Vikings, and really had that Aaron Rodgers in an offense bottled up. Aaron threw 3 interceptions in that game. He was sacked 3 times. They looked very, very uncomfortable in this game. So you've got to run. You've got to run between the tackles in this one.
Going to be key, no question. When I think about this Vikings defense, this comparison may sound a little bit weird. I think about the way Pittsburgh and some teams would play Peyton Manning, where everything looked the same. The goal to beat Peyton Manning was to just have the same shell and same look pre-snap every single snap. And so that way Manning could not use his brain and decipher things and pick apart your coverage before the ball was snapped. You gave him no information pre-snap. And in some sense, it feels like Minnesota does the same. They will mug and they will put 7 guys up on the line of scrimmage, and it just looks the same each time. And could they all rush? They could. Could they all drop? They could. There's examples of both. And so you never know what you're going to get. They will run cover 0 as likely as they are to run cover 2 and play a lot of interesting coverages in between. So that's a difficulty. How do you decipher all of that? And as you said, as Mike Tomlin said, it's not just on third down. Most defenses that are aggressive will present those looks on 3rd and 7 plus. Minnesota will do it on 2nd and 5. They do not care. They will show those looks in any, not really on 1st down, but 2nd and 3rd down, they certainly will. So running the ball is unquestionably going to be important. It's a good defensive tackle duo, not just the Hargrave, Jonathan Allen, former high pick, former commander, also playing good ball for them. So being able to run inside is going to be really key. But I just think about how will Pittsburgh have a game plan to defend those mug looks. It's not just on the quarterback. It's on the offensive line for the protection, the running back to know who's dropping, who's rushing, the receivers to know who's going to be hot. The ball's going to come out quick in a lot of those situations. It's just a lot to process, and just often it looks the same, and so you never know really how to deal with it.
Yeah, and look, they've got some good edge rushers over there as well too. And Jonathan Allen, and we talked a lot about Van Ginkel and his athleticism. That's like having to face Herbig over there on that side, because his quickness and his agility will let him set tackles up and either run around them on the outside or dip inside them. So Broderick Jones is going to have his hands full, and even if Van Ginkel has a diminishing snaps, they've got a former 1st-round pick in Dallas Turner over there. That's not a bad change up to have to go to over there, and they're just so chaotic and amoeba-like, if you will, when it comes. So Aaron Rodgers is going to have his hands full trying to decipher this, and I believe this is only the 2nd time with Flores in a key role as far as calling his stuff that Aaron Rodgers has ever faced that. Now, Flores obviously spent time with the Patriots, but he wasn't in a chief play calling role there. So you can bet that he's going to try to cause chaos. Unfortunately, I don't think you're going to see average yards per target go up in this one for Aaron Rodgers. I don't think I think the ball's going to have to come out quick, and it all goes back to running the football. If the Steelers are unable to run the football and they get themselves in a lot of third and 5 or longer situations, it just does not feel like it's going to go well for this offense.
I did check that. You're right. Did Rodgers see Flores when Flores was the head man in Miami? And he did not. In that 3-year span, they missed him by 1 year. So
Right.
This will be the 2nd time facing Flores in that kind of official lead capacity. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot much more to add in terms of those pass rushers. As Ben mentioned, Jonathan Grenard might be the most underrated and overlooked pass rusher in football. He's got back-to-back 12 sack seasons in 23 and 24. He's got 5 quarterback hits this year. Ben talked about how he kind of took his game to a new level this year. Turner, a 1st-round pick. He was, 15th overall, but the 3rd defensive player taken in that draft in 24. As I told Ben, it's not a lot of household names. Isaiah Rodgers, Josh Metellus, Ivan Pace. Not exactly the guys that lead the headlines, but it's a really good unit. They work together overall, and the results speak for themselves with a great DC behind it all.
They're going to have to take their shots on the outside. They are susceptible to middle of the field. I think they run a lot of middle of the field open, technically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of cover too.
There. So maybe you can get Jonnu Smith or Pat Freiermuth running vertical and attack some of those middle areas of the field there. It feels like for the Steelers to win this game, they're going to have to pop a long touchdown somehow, some way on this. And then once again, yards after the catch. The Steelers have been good on that so far, and the Vikings as a whole don't seem like they're haven't been a good tackling team. And I think Ben even noted on that when we talked to him here. There, I want to wear, I want to see how where Javon Hargrave is at this point of his career. You got to run at him. You got to be able to run up the middle on these guys. You got to wear out that front of the defense via the run. And then, there are obviously going to be opportunities to take some shots down the field. But even so, I think the Vikings have given up 3 pass plays of 20 or more air yards on the season. One of those, I think, was an out route to Roma Duze, was one of those in that Chicago game there. But there's just teams are not getting having a lot of success pushing the football down the field. If you get them for 1 or 2 in this game, you kind of hope that ends up in the end zone, because you're just not going to, it doesn't feel like you're going to have a lot of success of throwing the football 20 air yards or more down this field.
The Vikings will play a lot of too high on early downs, even against 12 personnel. So can Pittsburgh run the ball? They must run the ball. Running the ball against too high is the go-to in any situation, but especially so in a game like this. My other just kind of final thoughts, I think Aaron Rodgers has to take 2 approaches to uncovering and deciphering the Vikings defense, which is key to it all. Long counts and quick counts. His cadence, his use of cadence to get guys to tip their hands and get the coverage to start rotating on the hard count can be a weapon and has to be a weapon. It's something Rodgers is very good at overall. I think Russell Wilson was good at that last year too, so that's going to be key. But also mix up your tempo in the sense of go on some quick counts, go on 1 sometimes, because the Vikings like to be able to spin and hold coverages and rotate. And if you go on a quick count, maybe you get them out of what they want to do because they haven't had time to spin that safety down and replace and that kind of stuff. So I think you got to go two models here. Quick counts where you're hurrying up to the line, going on 1, getting the ball snapped quickly so the Vikings can't do all their pre-snap chaos-looking stuff. And then 2, have some hard counts in there too that might reveal that shell and that coverage before the ball is snapped.
Well, you better hold your water on offense as well too. And with this technically kind of being a short week and all, how hard is that to work on this week?
What do you mean by hold your water?
Don't false start on offense.
Oh, well, yeah, for sure. But I mean, that just comes with, hopefully, will Pittsburgh have to use a silent count in this one? Hopefully not. I mean, you wouldn't think the environment would be so loud that they couldn't, but if they can't use cadence verbally, then the hard count obviously goes away. So hopefully they're able to. But they got to say, certainly you can't false start in those situations.
All right. Good. That's a good pass defense. I don't expect Aaron Rodgers to throw for 300.
And if he does, it may mean that Pittsburgh played from behind in this game. Also, Minnesota's forced 7 fumbles this year. They are a ball-searching defense like Pittsburgh. Even on a give-up run at the end of the first half against the Bengals, they were ball-searching and popped the one out and recovered it late in the half. And so ball security's got to be even more paramount this week.
Yeah, Isaiah Rodgers, I think, ripped that one out from Jamar Chase at that. Not only that, he recovered it, took it to the house. So 2 defensive touchdowns sure will turn the tide of the game. And they had, what did they have, 5 takeaways in that game?
Yes, just like Pittsburgh, but they housed a couple of those. Yeah, Rodgers had a game for the ages. He had a pick 6, 2 forced fumbles, one of which he recovered and, as you said, stripped the ball away, ran it back for a touchdown. All that came in the first half, I think, too. So just an absurdly good game for Isaiah Rodgers.
Right.
All right, Dave, any other thoughts? Also, their kicker, Will Riker, kicked a 62-yarder at some point this season. He's 3 of 3 from 50+, and so dude's got a big leg, and so that's going to be noted. I don't know what the elevation and kicking conditions will be like in Ireland. I think it's going to be some rain today, Saturday, and it's going to clear up for Sunday, so we'll see how the field is. That's a big question. What is the field going to be like? I think it's grass they're playing on, but it's kind of unknown about what the conditions are like. I mean, the field will be in good shape, I'm sure, but just you never know on a field that has not been played on before.
Yep, you're right. We'll see.
All right, Dave, let's get to our week 3 picks. Before we do that, let's hear from our friends, as always, from MyBookie.
Yeah, we're excited to have MyBookie back after a 1-year hiatus of being a sponsor of the Terrible Podcast Friday shows, where Alex and I do all of our picks against the spread. If you're waiting for Sunday to start betting, you're missing half the fun and half the money. College football is, of course, already cooking at this time of year. Upsets, blowouts, wild covers, and MyBookie lets you hit it all. They have game lines, player props, and more. Everything you need before the pros even kick off. When Sunday rolls around, you're already up. MyBookie's got it all under one roof for you. You can win big on their NFL Super Contest that they have, and they also have survivor pools for those of you that like those. And if you're new to MyBookie, and if you are new to MyBookie, use our promo code TERRIBLE at sign up. That's terrible. And any bet you choose up to $500 is fully covered. Make your play. If it doesn't hit, you get it right back when you opt in using your bet back bonus token after sign up. And once again, use promo code TERRIBLE to take advantage of that bet back bonus token. MyBookie's where bettors win together, because bragging's good, but cashing in is even better. And Alex cashed in last night for the Thursday night game. The line ended up being 2 at MyBookie. To close, Alex took the Seahawks -2. I had a feeling that Arizona would not only cover, but I thought they would win outright. So that I was on pins and needles a little bit later in that one. But Alex is up 1-0 on this. Let's go to the other remaining games in Week 4 of the NFL. The Los Angeles Chargers, Alex on the road against the New York Football Giants, and of course they've got the rookie quarterback in Jackson Dart starting. Chargers 6.5-point road favorites in this one.
Those rookie quarterbacks, always hard to predict what kind of game you're going to get. Dart certainly, I think, will bring some energy, some toughness. The fans will be energized by him, but facing that Chargers defense, Jesse Minter, even though LA's making that long trip, give me the Chargers.
I will take the Chargers as well, too. I think they'll handily take care of this one. All right, next we got an AFC South matchup. Houston Texans hosting the Tennessee Titans. The Texans are 7-point home favorites.
Man, I've been on Houston all season. I think I've been wrong each time. They're 0-3. They just feel like the Jets of last year. We're like, oh, they're going to get it together at some point, and they just haven't. Tennessee's, of course, got its own problems. They're making a play calling change. Callahan giving duties to the quarterback coach, not the OC. I think that's what's happening there. A lot of weird going on with these two teams. Too big of a line with Houston struggling. I'll go with the Titans to at least cover.
I will go with the Texans at home to get a get-right game. I will lay the 7 there. The Atlanta Falcons are hosting the Washington Commanders. It sounds iffy on Daniels. I think odds are that he probably doesn't play. But the Atlanta Falcons have their own set of problems getting shut out last week there. Commanders go on the road, and I guess Terry McLaurin, what's going to happen with him this week? Doesn't sound like he's going to need a surgery, but he's not 100%. Commanders on the road laying 1 point against the Falcons.
Yeah, can we talk about that Atlanta game? 30-0 to Carolina. That was maybe the shock of the week. Not that just Carolina won, but they won in such convincing fashion. Yeah, Daniel's not on the practice field today. McLaurin, don't think he's going to play, but I'm still going to take Washington, Dave.
I'll take Atlanta in a get-right game to win this late with a field goal. Give me that +1 in this one. How about the New Orleans Saints go on the road against the Buffalo Bills? Bills laying 16 at home against the Saints.
I guess the Saints were that bad. I was going to ask the question, have the Saints been that bad? But the Seahawks blew them out last week. Was that at home for the Saints? Were they hosting Seattle? No, they were on the road, but they're at Buffalo this week, you said?
Right.
His lines are just huge. I'll take the Saints to cover. The Bills' defense has not been great this year, and so the Saints do enough to lose, I should say, but only by maybe 13, 14 points.
I'll go the other side of you here. I'll take Buffalo, lay that big 16 points there. And what should be a good game? Tampa Bay at home hosting the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are 3.5-point road favorites against the Buccaneers.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one. Tampa Bay seems to find a way, but the same can be said about Philadelphia. I'll take the Eagles.
I'll take Buccaneers plus the 3.5. I think the Buccaneers can win this one outright. How about the the Panthers go on the road after a big win against Atlanta? They play the Patriots. The Patriots are hosting the Panthers. The Patriots are 5.5-point home favorites.
Give me the Patriots. I think it's a good team. Even though they lost to Pittsburgh, they will not turn the ball over 5 times the way they did against the Steelers. So I will take New England by a touchdown.
I will take New England to cover that 5.5 with you there. Detroit Lions, after a game against the Baltimore Ravens where they came out on top on. Lions are hosting the Browns, who upset the Green Bay Packers. The Lions are 10-point home favorites in this.
Man, that Browns defense is legit. This is a great matchup. The Lions offense, the Browns defense. The question is, can the Browns offense kind of get it in gear, in any sort of gear? Judkins helped out last week. Can the Browns cover in a game that might be a little lower scoring? This one feels like a 10-point win overall. Give me the Lions, but I'm not super confident in that pick.
Yeah, I'm with you. This could end up being I think the Lions win this, but how much? With that said, I'll go ahead and jump on the Lions with you, lay the 10 points in this one. 49ers at home against the Jaguars. Who's going to start at quarterback for the 49ers? Jaguars have played pretty well so far. This will be a big test going out west here. 49ers laying 3 at home against the Jaguars.
Even the Niners, they're winning despite every injury imaginable. The Jaguars have shown, I think, some incremental improvement, but the Niners are doing a great job to win games by any means necessary. That continues, especially hosting Jacksonville this time.
And it doesn't sound like they're going to have Ayuk for a while either. Sounds like he's had some setbacks or whatnot with his recovery there. But all that said, 49ers at home, I will lay the 3 points along with you. How about the Rams hosting the undefeated Indianapolis Colts? The Rams 3.5-point home favorites after a weird loss to the Eagles last week.
Yeah, talking about a blown lead there. They're going to be angry, pissed off this week. I've been pretty skeptical of the Colts. I certainly want to give Daniel Jones credit. The team, Jonathan Taylor ran wild last week. I think the Colts get a little splash of cold water on them this week, even the Rams to win relatively comfortably.
Yeah, the Steelers could use a Colts loss here as well, too, even though they're not in the division, and I'll bring them down a notch here. I'll take the Rams lay to 3.5 points with you. How about the Raiders at home against the Bears? The Raiders are 1-point home favorite against the Bears.
Give me the Bears. I'm going to take Chicago. I think they're on the right track.
I smell a rat here. Give me the Raiders. I'll lay the point. Raiders get something fluky in this game to pull it out. I'll lay the point there. Kansas City Chiefs in the battle of, who would have thought this? 1-3 teams in week 4 here. Chiefs hosting the Ravens. The Ravens are 3-point road favorites in this one.
1 and 2? Did you say 1 and 3?
I mean 1 and 2. Sorry.
Someone will be 1 and 3 though.
Someone's likely to be 1 and 3. I apologize.
Yeah. That's crazy to be. You're rooting for KC, though, in this one, right? I mean, this is just take Baltimore down as much as you can in this one. Yeah, I really don't know which way to go. I mean, the Chiefs just have looked so disjointed offensively. It's really kind of become a shell of themselves. You just kind of wonder what's going on there. Baltimore's got some issues defensively, closing out games. The Chiefs do seem to win games close, but going in there ahead, yeah. What time is this game? Is this a 1 p.m. game?
It's a 4:25.
Okay, cool. So we can watch it you can watch it either way with the early game, but it'll be easier kind of after work settles down. I will take the Ravens, Dave.
I'll take the Ravens as well, too. Not a lot of confidence there on that one. Big game, revenge game. Micah Parsons goes back to Dallas. Dallas hosting the Green Bay Packers. Dallas won't have CeeDee Lamb in this one. Green Bay 7-point road favorites.
That's a big line for a road team. I know the Packers even coming off that Browns loss last week, which, hey, credit to Cleveland for that. But yeah, give me the Packers, Dave.
Yeah, I think they railroad them here. I'll lay the 7 points with you on that. How about I know everybody's looking forward to this one on Sunday night. The Miami Dolphins hosting the New York Jets. Dolphins 3-point home favorites in this one.
Justin Fields will get the start. He's cleared concussion protocol for New York. Miami's got a lot of problems, but there's still some fight in them against that Jets defense. That Jets defense is really good. Part of me wants to take Miami. The skid's not going to continue, but I'll take the Jets, Dave.
I'll go on the other side here. Miami pulls out something big. A couple of big plays with Tyreek Hill makes the difference, and they cover. I'll lay the 3 points in here. Denver Broncos at home against the Cincinnati Bengals. Denver laying 7.5 at home against the Bengals.
Jake Browning's a good backup quarterback. He's not as bad as things looked last week. He just kind of spiraled, and there were some of the forced fumbles and playing from behind. Bengals just had no running game. Chase Brown is less than 100 yards rushing on 40-something carries this year, facing the Broncos defense, even though Bo Nix has not taken the jump that I thought he would, at least not so far. Give me Denver.
I'll take Denver lay at a 7.5 as well, too. Let's see. There's two. Let's see. Is there 2 Monday night games this week?
Is there? Are they doing another doubleheader? Are they?
I can't remember if it feels like there's 2 Monday night games.
Yes, so there are. It's Jets, Dolphins, and Bengals, Broncos.
All right. Okay. And then we've got that ends up circling us back to the Steelers and the Vikings at Croke Park. All right. This line has actually grown a little bit since it opened here. So the Vikings right now are 2.5-point favorites versus the Steelers.
Thought about this one. I always think about these a little bit, not a lot. Take all my predictions with grains of salt. I picked the Patriots last week, and that did not come true. So I am good about kind of being the reverse jinx on this one. I just don't think Pittsburgh matches up well in any shape, form, or fashion in this one. An offensive line that has not been great, a running game that has not been there. Rodgers, even with his veteran expertise and knowledge of the game, seeing him struggle against Flores and the Vikings last year, maybe take 2. You can lean on that experience, learn from it, grow from it. I'm sure Rodgers will. Offensively, I would have rather faced J.J. McCarthy than Carson Wentz in this one. This game means a lot to Pittsburgh in so many ways. Obviously, to get to 3-1 for the bye week, for AFC North standing with the Ravens struggling a bit and the Bengals losing their quarterback. The pride to win in Dublin for the Rooney family, which will mean a whole lot to the organization, to Art Rooney II and company. Just, when the ball's kicked off, though, none of that matters. And I just see Minnesota, they're a well-coached team, a better coached team than Pittsburgh. And I think there's a lot of talent there, too. I don't think this one's going to be very close, Dave. And I don't usually predict these in this fashion, but I'll just shut up and give my prediction. Minnesota 28, Pittsburgh 10.
Wow. Okay. I overthink these as well, too. And at the start of the season here in the first 4 games, I had the Steelers going 3-1 with Minnesota and Ireland being the lone loss there. I've already told you what the final score is going to be, 2017 in this one. I don't see a lot of scoring in this one overall. Man, all the trouble and heartache and want of Dan Rooney finally to get this team to play in Ireland, and how important it is, and all that. No way they lose this game, right? No way. I do worry about that Minnesota defense, though. I think the reason to take Minnesota in this game is because of that defense and the way the Steelers' offense has played so far. On the flip side, I do wonder if they can force Carson Wentz into a couple errors here, maybe an interception, maybe a sack fumble that they return here. Win one for Dan Rooney in this one. They somehow, some way, the defense plays a part in this. They end up pulling out in what ends up being kind of a stinker of a game, I think. Steelers 20, Minnesota 17.
Well, I sure hope your prediction's a lot more right than mine. Let's always play our game of, and you've already kind of explained it, but you go first. If the Steelers win this game, they will win because fill in the blank.
There's a 40-plus yard touchdown on offense in this game, and there's 3 takeaways on defense in this game, and 5 Carson Wentz sacks.
Yeah, fair. I think it's similar. You hit a couple big plays in the pass game to beat kind of the blitz and some of those big pressures. Maybe that's run after the catch type stuff. You mug up and you get Metcalf on a slant, run after. And then I think you take away the run game from Minnesota, which is not elite at just an okay run game. You put the ball into Wentz's hands, and hopefully he makes some mistakes. He's certainly still ultimately a backup quarterback for a reason that wasn't starting for anyone and hasn't started for anyone in quite some time. So I think those are kind of the reasons why. Also, just Pittsburgh winning close games. If the game is close, even Josh Metellus, the Vikings DB/linebacker, talked about it. Steelers' superpower is winning in the fourth quarter, winning in those tight one-possession games, which has certainly been their calling card throughout Mike Tomlin's tenure. So a close game would bode better for Pittsburgh.
Steelers lose this, obviously, if they can't get a big touchdown on offense here. If on third downs they are less than 35%, obviously, if they're unable to run the football, and a loss would probably going to include Aaron Rodgers getting sacked 3 or more times in this game, and probably a turnover or 2 within that. So if they can't run, it's hard to imagine Steelers winning this game unless there's some flukiness that goes on. I think they're going to need a 40-plus or more yard touchdown in this game to win.
Who's most likely to get that 40-plus yard touchdown if you had to venture
The
a guess?
Vikings.
Well, I was saying for Pittsburgh individually.
For Pittsburgh, probably DK.
Okay.
Breaking one. I don't know.
I could see Calvin Austin getting loose.
Yeah, a slant to DK or one of those screens that he just gets on the horse and outruns everybody type of thing. So that's gonna. I feel like if we're talking about a win, we're gonna be talking about a big double explosive play touchdown for the Steelers.
Double explosive in Dublin. I'm ready for the headline on that. If they lose, you kind of know my reasons. The Minnesota Vikings defense gives Pittsburgh's too many fits, and Carson Wentz, a veteran's able to play point guard, as Ben talked about, distribute the ball to Jefferson, getting Addison back, and does enough on offense. So that is my
high diddle-diddleson Warren up the middle.
And hopefully it doesn't do 3 yards in a cloud of dust too, which is where it's been. He could break some tackles, and as you said, Minnesota's defense has not been a great tackling unit, so that'll be key. How many fans are expected for this game? I think they reduced capacity at Croke Park slightly from its max. I think like 76,000 is what it'll hold. Are they expecting a sellout crowd? I would imagine so.
I would imagine, even though I think there's some individual tickets that they'll fill this thing up, whatever they allow in there, I think. And I expect it to be pretty loud with Steelers fans.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think it sounds like 60-40 is kind of, like I said, the split. And so there's just kind of a lot of probably just general curiosity for this game. A team's just cheering at any moment because it's just fun for Ireland to have football. It's the first NFL game since, 97 when Pittsburgh played in the preseason. I think 25,000 attended that game. Obviously, going to be a lot more in this one for many reasons. So, yeah, it'll be a fun atmosphere, no question about that.
Look, if the Steelers lose this and the offense struggles and they can't get off the field on third down, and maybe let's say they get blown out like you predicted there, and a bye week coming up and a long flight back home from Dublin, there's going to be a lot of hand wringing here, as there probably should be here. We said at the start of this season that we're going to have a good taste of what this team is after their first 4 games of the season, and it's not going to be a fun bye week if they come home from Dublin with an L.
Somebody made the good point. If Pittsburgh loses this game, in probably any fashion, but especially if it's a wide margin like I'm predicting, how will Art Rooney react? He's a guy that I'm sure really wants to win this one as a point of pride. And owners kind of have that feeling, it's not just about wins and losses, but how those happen. We've heard, owners that have lost games to rivals or I don't know, former coaches that are not on the other side. That kind of stuff has really irked owners more than usual. So if the Steelers don't win this one, I'm just curious what will be going through Rooney's head. Obviously, he won't talk to the media, but I'm just curious how he'll personally absorb any defeat.
Look, how many years now have we been talking about the Steelers potentially playing in a game in Ireland?
A long time, yeah.
This is something that's important to the, look, every game you want to win, obviously, but I mean, there's been a lot of work and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that have gone for the Steelers to be the first team to play in Ireland. Obviously the lore and the history and all like that, the Rooney family and all, it will be very disappointing to Art, especially if he gets beat by, you got Aaron Rodgers versus Carson Wentz in this one,
Mm-hmm.
and you built this team with a lot of veterans and all, and you've got a lot of money spent on this team in cash for this year, and you're expecting to go over there and win if you're Art Rooney.
Right. There is a real point of pride this week. I think back to that 97 preseason game, which was just an exhibition game in Pittsburgh. I think Bill Cowher talked about we actually game plan, only preseason game we ever game planned for because we wanted to win this game because it meant so much for the Rooney family. I think they had a trophy that someone in the building made for that game in Pittsburgh. I remember Jerome Bettis scoring a touchdown. Like, they were playing that game hard, and that was just meaningless ultimately. This one, of course, has a real meaning to it from a standing perspective. So, yeah, it would be interesting if Pittsburgh does not play well, what the internal feeling is come the bye week.
Look, I guess the only bright side is if you lose here is that both of your losses so far are out of conference, right?
True. And you have not started divisional play. Now, on the flip side, if you win this game, no matter how you win it, you're feeling great. You're 3-1 in the bye week. If you come out healthy, which hopefully you do, then your defense is going to be probably really healthy, almost back to 100%, if not all the way there for week 6, which starts your divisional play. If the Bengals lose, even if the Ravens win, but certainly if they lose, I mean, let's say best case scenario, you win, Bengals lose, Ravens lose, you're 3-1, Bengals are 2-2, Ravens are 1-3, Browns, whatever. I mean, it's not a guarantee. Pittsburgh led the division for 3/4 of last year. They got off to that great start. They were leading and then they blew it. So that story's still to be written. But, if you told me back in June, Pittsburgh could be 3-1 after the bye with at least a 1-game lead on Cincinnati without Joe Burrow for the season effectively, I'm signing up for that all day long.
Yeah, look, 3-1 coming out of the first 4 games. Regardless of how obviously style points do matter, but to some degree. But I mean, wins and losses obviously matter more. You could come out of this week top 10 in the power rankings, or you could come out 25th.
I know that's what Pittsburgh's playing for, power rankings, but I get your point. Yeah, I mean,
you see what I'm saying? That I mean, the whole look of things, especially with the bye week coming, as you mentioned, and let's suppose Porter and Elliott don't play in this game, and you still manage to get a win, and your run game has an uptick of somewhat positive in this game. It will give you some warm and fuzzies coming out of this with a win.
No question about it. Is this the best team Pittsburgh has faced so far into the young season?
It feels like it. It really does.
I agree. Even with a backup quarterback.
Even with Wentz. Yeah.
In some ways, that's maybe even makes it a harder matchup.
All right. Okay. I think we got it there. We don't have a lot of, I don't want to spend a lot of time on emails on a Friday here. A lot of the same ones are bitching about, the offense and all like that. And I understand a lot of the same names are in here as well too. So let's just kind of wrap it up here, Alex. And I imagine the email machine will be full come Monday. We will be up bright and early Sunday morning, providing our coverage on the site and throughout the game, and obviously after the game as well too. And Alex and I will be back on Monday discussing what happens. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Get a username and password. Hit the login button. Use that username and password to take advantage of the ad-free version of the site. So until Monday, have a great weekend, everybody. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.